And we are recording. So, where to start? First thing I want to go over, Dawn. Well, just so you guys all know, Dawn is in the room. She's going to join us here. A lot of what we're going to kind of go through a whole process of client calling in and wanting services, or however we get referral, and really just kind of go through every step that we possibly can, all the way to potentially discharging a client. Joe had the amazing idea that maybe we will come up with a mock client and kind of go through all those processes and discuss it. So that's the aim here in a little bit. So Dawn, I'll give you time once we get into kind of the initial referral type stuff, if you have anything you want to say. But I wanted to hit on a couple other things here first. So if you have something to do, Dawn, you're welcome to do that for next 5 or 10 minutes. Let's see, where are my notes? One thing I wanted to go over, we talked about, we had a whole meeting there over HBS, which is the HTS form of either restraints or escapes or holds or blocks. We didn't go over the holds and the restraints. I'm pretty sure for everybody here, we are not supposed to be doing those in the first place. So I wanted to make sure I made that straight. Obviously the blocks and the escapes are very important for all of us to make sure we remain safe, as well as doing the best we can to keep our clients safe. So a couple things I wanted to touch on there is, if you are providing a mental health service, then we want to refrain from doing those as much as possible. We want to make sure we are providing interventions beforehand, as we start noticing a client is getting escalated, as they did a great job of talking about kind of those steps before we get into a crisis situation. The other thing I wanted to hit on is that if the situation does get into that level, that you would want to be contacting me or Joe immediately afterwards to talk about the process of filling out appropriate documentation and kind of what's going to occur there. I do think it's important to let you guys know that it's a good possibility that it'll end up being an MUI, which we'll talk about in a little bit, which is not necessarily a bad thing by any means. I just want you guys to be aware, and that we will go, we would talk about that situation individually on how to handle it in terms of documentation, as well as I'll go over the critical incident report here in just a little bit. The big reason I wanted to touch on that, Tara and Tess, I know it's fairly new stuff for you guys. So I would like, if you guys can prompt me sometime, maybe next week when you see me in person, that maybe we can go through some of those blocks and escapes a little bit more thoroughly to make sure that you guys are prepared to make, as I said, keep yourself protected and keep the clients protected. I did write down specifically hair pulls and bites and chokes. Obviously, those are some scary terms that we hopefully don't get involved with, but it is always a possibility in the field that we work in. So I would like to work specifically with you guys if you aren't comfortable in what we reviewed earlier today. The one thing I wanted to point out, they mentioned the airplane. If you're getting choked from in front and you have the airplane move, you want to go up and over the first arm and then under the second arm. So that's the airplane that I wanted to touch on. The other thing they mentioned is during a bite, we either want to feed it. So if they're biting our arm, we want to kind of go towards them. You want to be really conscious not to like thrust your forearm into them. It's kind of more of like a guide. Obviously, that can be a situation where you could potentially cause more harm. So I want you to be aware of that. And then they mentioned the key, which is your knuckle here. And if you do it to yourself, you put it right into the hinge of your jaw right here. There's a tendon that goes right through there. And if you just push with your finger, you can feel it, it's uncomfortable. And then if you do your knuckle and you turn it forward towards kind of your upper jawbone here, it is very uncomfortable. I do urge you to do that to yourself to know how uncomfortable it is and realize what you could potentially be doing to a client. It most likely will leave a bruise, so it's important to document that. Of course, all of our paperwork leaves a trail, and it's important to do anything beforehand to document what happened instead of retroactively. I think that's all I wanted to cover for HBS stuff, just to make sure. Christina let us know we don't do the key at the AIC. I would definitely say the key move is a very last resort type of situation. Also, welcome, Michelle. Hi. Michelle let me know she's going to be popping into all the different areas. Michelle, please feel free to jump in if you would like. But that's the HBS stuff. And I think all that I have to review there. I did want to, Michelle mentioned at the beginning of our session, being aware of where we can find the mission statement and all of that. Of course, we can find it on our badges. And you should have your badge with you at all times. But I also wanted to point out specifically in the Billingsley building that we do have those mounted on the wall right when you walk into the waiting room, just so you guys are aware of where those things are. Next, let's see, find my notes. I want to get into Paycor here. You guys had questions about Paycor. Give me just a moment, please. The always problem of having too many windows open. Oh, goodness. Need to authorize my computer, evidently. All right, let's see here. Thanks for your patience. Give me just a moment. All right. All right. Sharing my screen here, just so you guys know, yours might look a little bit different than mine. But specifically what you guys were asking was how to put in PPL days or DTO days. I wanted to show you that it is right here, an accrual activity. And let's see, your guys's stuff is in my way here. There we go. You can click request time off right up here. And then right here is kind of where you can click through what type of request off you're doing. So DTO will be used on days that were scheduled off, such as holidays. I actually don't know if we log in our hours or if we do DTO today. Maybe. What's that, Tara?
I said I was going to ask the same thing.
Okay.
I was too.
I'll have to get clarification on that. I would say it's a work day, so you can put in the number of hours that you're attending the PDD day. Other DTO days, we just came across some calamity days at the branches and at AIC. So that would be there too. At some point, calamity days will be added to this. So just so you guys are aware. PPL and vacation, hopefully you guys are aware of that. This balance stuff over here, it'll show 0 hours. Don't worry about that for right now. Any questions on Paycor?
Question. So I follow AIC protocol for snow days, but I saw my Zoom new market clients. How do I put that in? Do I just put in the hours I would have been at the AIC PTO? And then what is the allocation for the new market clients? Because normally I just put AIC 8 hours because that's where I'm physically at, but I was at home that day.
Good question. I'll come up with answers later. Thanks though. Actually, let me make sure I write it down, or else you guys know I'll forget. Really, Christina, specifically for you, since we do have the ability to work via Zoom, you just want to be doing your best to switch to Zoom and still providing work throughout that day, whether that's billable or administrative stuff.
I don't know. That's what I did. I just need to know because of the protocol. That's what it said I follow is AIC. So just clarifying.
Yeah, I'll get you more clarification a little bit later. Anybody else? All right. Mindy is an amazing resource for anything Paycor related, by the way. Mindy Owens. So that is that. That. Excellent. All right. Next. Critical incident stuff. So for a number of you, I let you guys know there is a new critical incident report in CareLogic. So I really wanted to make sure while I have you guys all your attention on me that we go over it together. As it does look a little different. I'm really crossing my fingers that it's super user friendly for you guys. But I wanted to make sure you guys actually saw what that form looks like. So share screen again. Here's that form. Obviously, it looks slightly different from CareLogic, but I ran a report from CareLogic to pull this up. The starting stuff should be almost the exact same as it was on the last form. But this next area of check what events are being reported, I guess it should be, hopefully it's just one event. But we have a lot of options here. The intent is one, that this form should cover any sort of unusual incidences that occur. I've talked to a couple of my team members, and typically I would say the rule of thumb is if you are questioning whether or not you should fill out an unusual or critical incident form, you probably should. But always, if you have any questions, contact your supervisor, Joe or myself, and we'll be more than happy to walk through it and discuss whatever specific incidences might come up, as I know we always have something special come up. The other thing to note here is that I did purposely put what falls under a UI or an MUI, which is category A, or MUI category B, or MUI category C. If you're questioning if something is an MUI, contact your supervisor immediately so we can talk about it and cover what steps need to be taken. As I go on, feel free to look through those, and if you have any questions, we can cover them. Next, persons involved. I tried to provide as many spaces as we can, so not all of these have to be filled in, but make sure you outline people that were there, witnessed it, involved in the reports, whatever. Location, where did it happen? Was physical restraint used? Was there any injury? Was the injury visible? Just make sure you do a thorough job of describing. Remember, when we're reporting on this stuff, that we want to be very objective and provide evidence for anything that we're observing. I always like to use the example of, if you say the client was happy, I want evidence to know how do you know that? So it is much more helpful to provide the client is happy as noted by a smile on his face, or something along those lines. Let's see here. The actions you took, any other medical follow-up, marking specifically where the injuries occurred, if there was any. Some of these, there wasn't an injury, it's a different thing, so you don't have to fill it out. You can hit NA right here. And then being specific on the notifications of who you made aware of it. For a number of these, there is follow-up that happens after you complete the initial report. Specifically, if you would say notified children's services, or some of the boards, or maybe even your supervisor, on this form, once you sign off on it and complete it, if you go into Care Logic, let's see here. One second here. Why is my share screen paused? There, now you guys can see my screen, right? If you go, so you already submitted this critical incident report, and now there's some follow-up that happened. So maybe you called Child and Family Services. There is an addendum over here. If you click that, you can add an addendum and make additional comments on that document, such as who you notified, like I said, maybe supervisor's name, or you'd really want to write down maybe the person you talked to at Children's Services and the case number and things like that. This can also be used for the supervisor to make additional notes after the fact as well. And that is my critical incident. Questions on that?
Sorry, I'm gonna be that person this whole time. I'm just thinking, because all of my kids right now are really, really high self-injured, and I'm gonna be like filling them out every 10 minutes. So if the like with self-injury, is it just like an instance? So like we had bang, but I blocked it, we don't have any marks. Or if it's like we had banged and we have a mark and we're filling it out, or because they're all having data being taken on it by the consultants across environments. I'm just trying to, because I'm going to be filling it out every 5 minutes. And
is it an unusual incident?
Well, that's not my job. Decide if it's an MUI or a UI.
I didn't ask
Or
if it was an
previous-
MUI or an UI. I'm just asking if it's something unusual that happened. Was it different than your typical day with that client?
No, if it's on there, I'm just making sure I'm covering all my bases. It's a
So
valid question.
if you have a client that's head banging constantly or has behaviors that he engages in routinely, that should be already documented somewhere, as well as it should go on. We have record of that. Now, Michelle asked, did it cause injury? Yeah, that would be the next step. If it caused injury, then yeah, that would be definitely a critical incident to document. The other question I would ask is this something I need to document? Injury would be very important, whether it's a scratch, a bruise, or whatever. As I mentioned before, being proactive in your reporting is going to help out a whole lot more than being reactive. If a parent's coming in 2 days later wondering why a bruise showed up after your session. So those are things you want to ask yourself. And I don't see anything wrong with filling out a critical incident report if you have those questions, if you're questioning it in the first place.
Yeah,
Michelle, would you like to add something?
every 5 minutes.
Christina, specific to that situation where it's a self-injurious behavior, I would look at a few things. One, if it's happening that frequently, then I would definitely make sure it's filled out at least once so that we know it's been identified. And then from there, you would go and meet with all the team members on there, on that client's case, determine whether or not there needs to be a formal behavior plan in place. There needs to be some sort of intervention if it's happening that frequently. The other thing is you would probably move to a different kind of data system then to track it and whether or not there's going to be progress, where it wouldn't be appropriate to use a critical incident form unless it caused injury in that particular moment or day. And then the last thing is I would want to make sure that it's in their diagnostic, or PDE somewhere that this has been identified. And if it's not, then you definitely should fill out an incident form, because that would be then the prompt to go ahead and do like a DA update. If it already is in there and it didn't cause injury, you're already putting interventions in place and all that kind of stuff, then I don't think it would require an incident form every time. But instead, a different data collection system that would make a lot more sense, like a frequency, and duration scatter plot or something along those lines. But that would be the other thing, because if it's not listed somewhere in the PDE or DA updates, then we technically shouldn't be treating it, right? So if we're treating it in some way and it falls under our ISP goals, then we just have to make sure it's there.
Yeah, they're in the ISPs. I just wanted to clarify because they all seem to be engaging in things right now. So I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, I would definitely like call a team meeting or something with, the consultant or BCBA or whomever's on those cases, and you guys can brainstorm. Is everybody seeing it? Is it happening in every environment? That kind of thing, and do some investigation.
Thanks.
Does that help, Trevor?
Absolutely. Thank you. Joe, looks like you had a question.
I do, and I'm going to ask for my QMHS staff because I know they're all thinking it. So if they are in a classroom working with a client and their self-injurious behavior, what is our protocol? What should we do? And I can think of two scenarios. One, that the client they're working with is engaging in HBS or any kind of SIB, or they're in a classroom where they have a client, but they're not serving that client who engages in SIB. And just kind of looking at what kind of process you're looking for in that, and either contacting me or you, or just kind of a rule of thumb for them to know. I know that can be a bit of a sticky subject, but I know that my clinicians are probably thinking that right now, and I just want to have a clear path for that.
Absolutely. So first, Joe, you're great at asking questions where I want to answer the second part first.
Okay.
So I answer the second part. If I believe, let me get my thoughts straight here. You mentioned if somebody's engaging in self-injurious behavior, but they are not our client, correct?
Not our client, or not the client we're serving. So there's someone that they do serve, but they're not working with them right now and they observe it.
Yeah. So I would direct that to, let's hope HLC is attending to it the way that they their policies and procedures outline. I usually bring up the fact that we can't know everything. And the same's different, vice versa. So if we have a client in session, I would not want someone to come in and intervene on a behavior that maybe I'm ignoring for a specific reason. Maybe I have the data in the background and this is my procedure of how I'm addressing it. And then they come in and block or intervene in any way. That's really interrupting my approach. The same is going to be true, if I'm in a classroom and there's another kid doing something, the teachers or the aides or the HLC staff, they may already have a procedure in place or something that they're going about doing. And it's just not our job to intervene in that. So I would say if there's concerns, of course, come to me, either Joe or myself, and discuss it, or bring it to, actually, I'm sorry, Joe, Angie, or myself, and discuss it. And maybe they can bring it to the coordinators' attention to figure out what we can do into the future if that situation is something that's regularly occurring.
Hey, Joe, specifically filling out the form, I would say you don't need to unless you're in the moment serving that client.
Okay.
If you feel uncomfortable in any way in that advice, then you can certainly stop serving your current client and go and help de-escalate. But I agree with Trevor. I wouldn't in any school situation right now at HLC, because they have their own protocols and they're really trying to refine them and get them implemented and train their own teams on how the new school wants to do it, the new owners. So the only thing that, you can really do that would be helpful would be to make a mental note of it and then bring it to Joe or Trevor or Angie later. But if it's not our client, then the answer would be no. If it's our client, but I'm not seeing them at the moment, and I'm not able to stop what I'm doing and actually help, then really I shouldn't be documenting that necessarily. But I can make notes in a comment to the chart or something like that if you really want to, a memo to chart, but it definitely not a CI form or a UI form in that case.
Thank you.
Does that answer the second part of your question?
Yes, it does.
All right. Now, the first part of this question, you're in a classroom and a client is engaging in self-injurious behaviors or some sort of aggression or something along those lines. Again, I'd redirect you to the HBS training that we just had. As mental health providers, we should be just like, our specialty in that situation should be attending to some of those precursors and really working on de-escalating that client, or maybe removing the environment, or all these different options that we have to hopefully not get into that situation in the first place. But if we do get into that situation, I do want to outline, in terms of HBS, we can block and escape and keep ourselves safe. A big point I want to make is that we do not want to stop the client's range of motion. So I use the example, let's pretend, if you guys can see me, I'm sitting in my jet here, and I am reaching behind me, trying to punch you. You're standing behind me. You can put your arm out and block their arms from hitting you in the face. they still have a range of motion to move their hands around any other way besides hitting you, or hitting, you know, the client, the peer beside them. So that's not blocking their range of motion. When we get into blocking their range of motion, and then we are talking about, you know, potential restraints, is when we are talking about grabbing a client. If we're grabbing their wrist, you know, there's a let me get my virtual background off of here for a minute. It's interfering with my hand motions. There we go. If so, client's hand here, my hand here, all of this open hand, I'm blocking. The second I wrap my hand around them, or grab their shirt or all this stuff, this is stopping their motion. This is still allowing them to move around. Hopefully you guys can see that, all right? So we can block areas. Another example would be a client sitting in their chair. So if somebody would sit in their chair, you guys maybe can't see my chair here, but if you stand behind them and they have the back of the chair and you behind them, and you have your arms on both sides of them and the desk in front of them, where can that client move? He has nowhere to go. That's not good. But if we're behind the chair and maybe we're blocking his right side because he's hitting his peer on his right side, but there's still all this space on the left side that he can move, we're fine there. So we just want to make sure that we're really not disabling their range of motion. They need some way of escaping. We don't want to be manipulating their arms, their body in any way where we're grabbing them and forcing them to stay seated, or I guess forcing them is a great word. We don't want to be forcing our students, clients, whatever, to be doing anything. But we do want to be ensuring safety. How's that, Joe? Does that bring up more questions than answers, anybody?
I have a question. This one should require an easy answer.
We'll see.
When if I'm filling one out and at the top there where it says list your supervisor, do I put Joe or you, Trevor?
Whatever you feel compelled. I would probably list who you're going to most often in that situation. I would guess you're probably going to Joe the majority of the time, but
Yeah.
maybe you can't get a hold of Joe and you get a hold of me, or something more pertinent to me, then that's fine.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. See some question. Is it okay to block doors in case they are trying to escape the building? It's a good question. Block doors in case they are trying to escape the building. So trying to escape the building, yes, you're ensuring safety, and they can still run around the building, classroom, whatever, right? Now blocking them into a specific room, I don't think you guys necessarily have de-escalation rooms. At the main campus here in New Market, we have de-escalation rooms, and that can get a little bit more fuzzy if we're holding a kid into a room or forcing them to be specifically, I guess, confined to a room. But when we're ensuring safety from leaving the building or situations like that, then yeah, we're fine with that. Anything you want to get more specific on that, Rochelle?
No, we have like a door that goes outside, and then within our building there's also a cafe, and like we just recently had a student like try to go through the doors to get through the cafe, so I had to block those doors. I just wanted to make sure that was okay.
Yeah, that would be fine. And yeah, I know your guys' situation. You guys have other, or wait, you're in Lancaster, right?
Athens.
Oh, Athens. Okay. I was picturing Athens when I was about to say this, but yeah, you guys have other businesses there. So that can be a unique situation as well. I don't see any problem blocking, like, I know what you're talking about with the cafe, blocking or locking those doors because they do have access to the rest of the school and all of that. I'm stuttering over, there's situations where maybe a client is attempting to get into another classroom to maybe aggress towards another client or something. Again, we're ensuring safety there. But we just don't want to be basically holding them into a room.
And Trevor, just to jump in for a second, you know, the majority of our QMH staff are going to be working within the realm of the classroom. So a lot of this stuff, there should be HLC staff there to be able to handle all of these things. For example, like if they need to go to the bathroom or things like that, these are things that HLC should be able to provide for them. So, you know, anything that would be happen, we would just be back up just in case something unforeseen or beyond the norm happens, and they'd be able to handle that. I know at this point, a lot of QMHSF do have walkies and are able to just to call for team and kind of get away from the situation as soon as someone has eyes on it.
Yeah, and I was going to add too, for a lot of these situations, if it is something that you're questioning, really what I would like to see is, you know, be meeting with the team and discussing, again, back to some of those precursor type things of how we can prevent this, you know, situation from occurring in the future, or how we're going to handle it in the future. Great questions, though. Anything else? Critical incidents?
I had a quick
I wanted
question.
to clarify really quick, if for like testing session situations, if a parent decides to lock the door for their own child, that's okay? Since it's the parent making that choice? Or,
Michelle says yes, so I say yes.
okay, I assumed since it was like parent making that decision for their own child, that would be okay, not something I'm doing, but I just wanted to clarify.
Well, where it gets sticky is if it's an adult, and if the
Right,
parent
I was thinking more like the littles,
so
but
technically, if it's a little guy or little girl, then yeah, the parent can, you know, pretty much do as they choose, and if until it becomes an abusive situation.
right, yeah.
But if it's an adult, they really don't have the right to block. I mean, like to control unless they're a guardian.
Yeah, I was
Um,
thinking more the littles who like to run out of the room, but that's a great point, yeah, for the adults. It's different.
Yeah, and also Stony, specifically for testing, we have had times where the client maybe likes to elope, so we ask the parent to sit outside the room too, to help out with that situation. That made me think of something else though. Oh, also a client is able to make choices too. So, you know, maybe they request a break and they want to go into a small room and have the lights and door shut. That's their request, as long as we're still making sure they're safe and all that good stuff. That's okay, but we can't be you know, closing them into rooms and providing seclusion or anything along those lines. Aaron, I think you had a question.
You actually just answered it. I was going to ask if, because I have a client that I work with primarily, and he often requests to go to a different room for a break. So I was going to ask if that was okay.
Yep. Yeah, as long as the client's requesting it. And I get a little bit worrisome with a client, you know, like I said, we have de-escalation rooms, which are what, I don't know, 4x4 rooms that you can close the door and shut the lights off. And some of the kids really like that to get something that's, you know, overstimulating them out of the way and calm themselves down or whatever. But we also luckily, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The most recent incident was they were having a verbal confrontation with another peer, and they asked to switch rooms to be removed from that.
Yeah, I would be finding any way to reinforce that. That is a great coping skill, and
there was much praise when he made that comment.
yeah,
Yeah,
provide him with everything.
I completely agree with you, Trevor, on that one. And Aaron, my only question would be, what does HLC want us to do in those situations? So just making sure that we're asking them if we're within their classroom. It's great that he used his words, but what if they don't want him to miss something? I don't want to get in that situation where now we're pulling him from, sessions. In fact, one of their new policies is that all services are provided within the classroom. So it's important that you ask that question. Except for counseling. Sorry, guys. You guys are good.
Well, and therapeutically, that can come in if you have a client that likes to split.
Is that something we should discuss with HLC staff before the session or in the moment?
I personally would just touch base before. If you already know that these behaviors occur, then I would just touch base and say, hey, my understanding is you've got this new policy. How would you like me to handle it? Is it okay? If you already know it's okay, you don't have to even go there right now. I think that you can just continue as is. But if it's a brand new behavior, then I would not hesitate to address it in the moment. Hey, what do you want me to do? So I think it could go multiple ways.
I was there, yes. I know it's the same client, or I'm thinking of the same client. And Aaron, I think your approach to it was completely appropriate, because both of us, as soon as the client requested it, Aaron's eyes, my eyes went on the two teachers, and they were like, yeah, that's actually a great idea. So, yeah, we communicate with our eyes too, with the teachers to get an idea of what they want us to do as well. So
Yeah, and that's excellent. Even a quick nonverbal of looking at a teacher, is this okay, or getting that direction is just excellent.
Trevor, I just want to say real quick, I am in my car now because I'm headed to get my COVID vaccine. So if you want me to turn off my video, I will, but I'll try to make it as appealing to the eye as possible.
I think you can probably turn your video off while you get your vaccine. Thanks. All right. Anything else before we move on? All righty. Now, so the big thing I wanted to make sure we take this time for is to really go through just kind of like the most detailed process that a client could possibly go through, from initially requesting services all the way through how we conduct services, how we come up with treatment plans, how we provide those services, and everything else. So I did share a couple documents with you guys. I might be bouncing back and forth on those. But I'll try to stay as organized as possible. So first step is client and request services. Maybe they, I don't know, maybe you're at a doctor's office and someone asks what you do and they're like, oh, we'd really like to look into your services. Or maybe their case manager refers them. Maybe another team member of ours thinks that a client might benefit from additional services, whatever it is. Somebody please raise your hand with the little emoji or your actual hand or whatever, and let me know what that first step is. Who should they be directed to? Tara.
2018.
What's that, Mike?
470-2018.
There you go. Phone number and all. Yep, Tara's information. She should be our starting point for any client. Tara, somebody calls in or you get a referral or whatever occurs, what happens at that point?
So when someone calls in wanting services or wanting an assessment or whatever, the first step is filling out an intake screener form. Number one, that way we gather all their contact information up front. We have their insurance information on that form, any current diagnoses that they have. How they heard about us is important. We track how they heard about us, whether it be from Nationwide Children's Hospital or I've been getting several referrals lately from Dayton Children's Hospital, which I find interesting. So that's been a good source. But anyway, so I would complete the intake screener form. I add them to CareLogic, and then I forward their intake screener form to our lovely billing department, who then does their job. And if Dawn wants to speak on what that job looks like once they get the intake referral form, she can. Dawn, would you like to speak on that process?
We'll get to Dawn in just a second.
That's fine.
Okay. So then I would forward it to her and her team, and they respond back to me in a very timely manner with less than 24 hours. If it's early enough in the day, I hear back from them same day typically. If it's later in the day, it might be the next morning. Once I get that insurance information, I'll reach out to the family and go over their benefits with them, and then see if they still wish to continue scheduling an appointment. I look and see which clinicians are credentialed with their particular insurance, which is super duper important to make sure that they're credentialed with whatever insurance the potential client might have. Make sure that they don't need a prior auth for, I've never seen a prior auth needed for intake so far, but that may happen, I'm not sure. But so anyways, and then I would schedule them with the clinician who is next up or needs the most clients added to their schedule.
All right, so yeah, thank you. First step, Tara contacts the client, gets their information, fills out the intake screener form. Tara, where can that intake screener form be found?
Should be on the drive. All of our intake paperwork should be on the drive.
The intake screener form, where do you upload that to?
Oh, it goes in CareLogic. Sorry, I thought you meant if someone wanted one of those forms, but yes, it gets uploaded into CareLogic.
We're at in CareLogic.
It gets uploaded in their document library.
Thank you. Yeah, Tara will immediately upload that intake screener form into the document library. This is the first step in what we consider the golden thread. And you're going to hear me say golden thread about 72 million times today. That intake screener form is our first form of documentation and paperwork to show what services we're going to provide for this client. It does have some very unique and helpful information on it, such as previous diagnoses. There we go. Previous diagnoses and whatever, what services they're seeking, who referred them, who their insurance payer is, things like that. So once we as clinicians receive a referral or someone gets put on our schedule, this would be the first document we want to look at to start gaining knowledge about this client and why they're coming across, coming into our doors and what they're interested in. That's also very important for customer service. I know personally, I get pretty irritated if I have to repeat myself and tell the same story to people over and over again. So the more information I have when I get ready to sit in front of a client is going to be extremely helpful, and it's going to make them feel like we are doing our work even before they come in the door. So like I said, knowing, just when you get to the PDE, just mentioning, like, oh, okay, I already see that he's been diagnosed with ADHD and autism in the past. Can you tell me about that? Instead of the opposite of asking them, what are your previous diagnoses? That can already start that step to make a parent feel like we're working hard for them. You can also have a lot of questions answered off of that screener form, like in terms of what services they're seeking. And you can already be prepared, depending on what their payer source is, to have that discussion with them and how we're going to provide them, or maybe they're off the wall of what they're seeking and we don't feel like it's going to help. Then we can already start being prepared on how to have that conversation and how we can help. So that's the intake screener form. So then that intake screener form gets forwarded to Miss Dawn Nichols. Your turn.
Can I ask a quick question?
Please.
I'm sorry, that's why I was unmuted, because I was going to ask a question. Now, what I've been typically doing is a little different than that. So I want to make sure that if I need to do something more in line with the golden thread, I will. Since I'm in Zanesville, and I usually have been collecting like the copy of the insurance card and the social and getting contact information and things like that. And then I tend to scan and send those to Tara and Dawn and her team. Should I still do that, or should I just have them contact Tara? Or
that's all very helpful, especially if you already know a client or parents or whatever. It can be helpful. It can be hard. Let's see here. Sorry. It can be helpful to have some of that stuff up front, especially sometimes our parents aren't very comfortable with sending an email with that information or whatever. But as you said, I do something very different. That is why we're going over this piece by piece, because we do want to make sure everything is streamlined and the same. So I guess what I'm telling you is, when you get interest, we want to get that information to Tara, and that's our first step. If that information is you emailing and saying, hey, here's a couple things that I've already gotten, that's going to speed up the process a little bit. But we definitely do not want you inputting things into CareLogic. That's 100% Tara. The ECR in CareLogic is 100% Tara and Dawn putting that information. I'm sorry, Tara and Dawn's team putting that information in.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Dawn and Michelle, I'm going to read your text while Dawn jumps in here.
No worries. So once Tara sends my team the information, what we do is we start a process. We bring up their information in either their Medicaid portal or their insurance portal and make sure it's active. Get the basics, make sure that possibly the parent didn't provide incorrect information to Tara. Then the girls get on the phone and actually speak with a representative from the insurance company. And we do that to find out about different CPT codes, if there's a prior authorization involved, and any loopholes. If there's not out-of-network benefits, we're going to put that on there. We're going to find out what copays are, what deductible amounts, all that good stuff. Also, when we're looking at Medicaid, we're going to double check their profile and see if it shows they have other insurance. Because a lot of times, Tara will only get half the story from the family, unfortunately. They'll just say, we have Medicaid or CareSource, and really there's a commercial policy involved. Or with that, maybe they used to have a Aetna plan, but they haven't updated Medicaid. So we have to have all that information done correctly, because if we try to provide, especially like an intake or a service that is billed to the insurance company first, Medicaid will not pay for any of those services if we haven't went through the proper channels. And if they say that they don't have the Aetna policy, for example, and we try to bill Medicaid, they're going to deny those services. So that's why sometimes we'll come back and tell you, hey, we need to get in contact with the family. They need to call Job and Family Services and update the child or their profile so that we have all the accurate information. Once we have all that good stuff, we go into the client's ECR and we add their payer information, and we also add all the payer insurance information too, the deductible, co-pays, all that good stuff. We also update guarantor information and just kind of do a double check for Tara. And it's nothing that she's done wrong, but sometimes, you know, she gets phone calls and, you know, maybe road instead of an avenue, things like that. Or might click on that mom is a male or for whatever, you know, things happen like that. So we just do, we're just her backup. And then once we do all that, we send Tara a nice little email saying, hey, they're good to go. And she can make her phone call, or if there's any kind of issues, then she can reach back out to the family. And then it's really helpful in some cases if we can get that insurance card too, or a copy of it. And then we always upload that information into their document library.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The key to going over this step so thoroughly is to let you guys know that these two are the start of the process, and that is very, very important that they complete those steps. The second we start deriving from those steps is where we start coming up with mistakes, or things are inputted just slightly different, or whatever it is, and it causes mistakes later on down the road. So with now understanding that those two key parts, if you notice something's missing, or maybe something doesn't seem right, or you have questions, you want to go to them and ask those questions or bring it up. So go to Tara if you notice maybe, I know one thing that's been coming up is social security numbers missing. A lot of times our parents do not want to provide social security number over the phone, which is understandable. But it is important that that information is in there. So if you notice that, let Tara know. She'll call, she'll put it on a list, whatever, to try to get that information later. Questions about billing and the input of the financial information, all that. Dawn's team's amazing at answering those questions. Christina, you asked about the AIC. They have their process, but that would be from the point of the AIC completing their screener forms and collecting the info. If that comes across to our team, that would come to Tara. And then I'm willing to bet, if I can put some words into Tara's mouth, that she will go over that intake screener form and see if anything's missing or whatever, and start these steps at that point. All right. So,
Trevor, can I chime in real quick?
Yep.
With the AIC, I do know Tanya and Sam do send over information to us to start the process for looking up benefits before the kiddos actually start at AIC, so that they can, when they're meeting with the family, they can let them know what is covered.
Yeah, I typically don't get anything from the AIC.
yeah, sometime you would get something from the AIC if it pertained to our team. So if they would need a PDE and ISP, then we would take
Right.
that.
For speech or OT, I'll help out with that typically.
Yep. Then we would start this process. Thank you guys. So yeah, then all of that is confirmed and figured out, and then it goes back to Tara. And as Tara mentioned, she will look up who is able to provide our first official service, which would be the PDE, the intake and the PDE. And she'll do all sorts of work, like figuring out which clinician's most free, which is credentialed, blah, 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 blah. And that individual gets placed on one of our schedules, typically to conduct a PDE with that client. So Then we fast forward to the client walking through our doors, and we need to do the intake paperwork. As of right now, hopefully you guys are all very familiar with the intake paperwork. Right now, we want Tara to be also handling all of that. Once again, it's just easier is the only way to put it, that if we have one person doing a job, then it's done the same way every time, and it makes everything easier. So we do the intake paperwork, and Michelle is actually going to jump in if she's listening. Okay, 1 minute on specifics to the intake paperwork. Before she does jump in, I'll say she's having some technological problems. But as I mentioned, right now the specific intake paperwork, what I'm talking about is the case manager form, the code of ethics form,
Orientation packet.
all of those, they're in CareLogic. We have electronic documents of that, but if you guys know anything that's happened in the last year concerning COVID, we've really had to get creative on how we do that process. Tara will, if a client comes in, she might do paper forms, she might have them sign the electronic forms, or she might send it through Adobe Sign. Currently, you might find those documents either specifically in the intake documents of CareLogic or uploaded into the document library. I'm not going to go into super depth on that because Tara does handle that, but Michelle is going to jump in here, I think.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry. I just wanted to announce to the team that we've been researching different products out there to make your lives easier. And Tara, this really will impact you, I hope in a positive way. But the first thing that we've done is we've purchased a subscription to a text format for us to send out reminders for appointments. And the client then can say, you know, yes or no, or, you know, opt out, or all those things. So it actually is interactive, and it'll have a message in there that says, if you need to reschedule, please call this number. But then Tara, you should be able to just pull up a report every day and see what, you know, the responses were. And it would be very similar to what I assume most of you are now getting with your primary care physicians, right? You know, or even, I don't know, the salon, even restaurants. So I'm very excited about that. We're in the process of setting up those accounts, and I was in it last night. What we're going to do we're really going to, I guess, have to test how frequently you're using it. I didn't know how many calls to purchase because it's a per call cost. And I think what we'll do is just take like the first quarter and see, I've, you know, purchased so many units for you or whatnot, and then you can, you know, test it. But we're definitely going to need your help, Tara, here, I would say in the next couple of weeks, getting contacts set up in the system, as well as, you know, the messaging that we're going to send out. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. We also bought a subscription to the One Call Now program, which is what HLC uses. And I've been using it too for years in one of my other practices. That one we're going to reserve mainly for if there's closings due to weather or COVID or whatever, you know, the case may be. Maybe reminders that there's an event coming up, or it's going to be the holiday and we're not going to be open, or something along those lines. And that's primarily for the employees. So you should get an invite here in the next couple of weeks to join that I don't know what they call it, I guess a group for the One Call Now, and you guys can then get information that way. That would also mean, though, that Joe, anything for the branches, if that is a good way to communicate special things that are going on, let's talk about it. I can get you an account or whatever we need to do. I just don't know how helpful that is, but if it is, I'm certainly open to it.
I'll look and see what ways it can be useful and let you know.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll let you guys, expect it probably within the next couple of weeks. Again, like I said, I was in it last night, and I did have some issues, so I did have to email the group last night as well, or the company, and we'll see what they say. It's probably user error on my part. New technology, not my friend. The other thing, and this is probably even more exciting, I think, is that there is now a product out there that connects with CareLogic to some degree. And we are going to, it allows people to access our forms in like from our website, or we can send them instead of like Adobe Sign every time. It would be sent through this. But we're going to move our intake packet and process to that system. It will allow us to hand a client a tablet when they arrive and say, here is your account. Please let me know if there's any updates to your insurance or your address or your phone number. The only bad part about it is that it doesn't then sync that data into all of the fields that you could possibly need it in CareLogic. So that's where their system, they are not interested, CareLogic is not, or I should say Qualifax is not interested in building that kind of platform. I've been asking for years. So what we're going to try to do is utilize this kind of, partner platform. And I think it will make things much easier overall, but there still will be some hand entry on Tara's part, but she should just basically get a whole packet and be able to upload that and never have to like create a document specifically through Adobe for someone or whatever. And then eventually these clients will have their own account, so they will be able to log into that portal and access any of the documents they've ever sent you or shared with you. They can even upload their insurance card, although I imagine that's not super easy for a lot of clients. They'll probably take a picture and then not know what to do with it, I suppose. But, so I think it will help in some ways, and in other ways, it's still going to be extra steps that I was hoping to eliminate. But it's that I feel like is at least a good start. Otherwise, we are looking at moving to a completely new EHR system. And so far, the only EHR systems that I've found that have this link for patient portal and, all these documents and such, they're all medical related. They are not mental health or behavioral health related. So I have looked at even the medical ones, wondering, can I modify things and make it work for us? Because like, it's super annoying. So if anyone wants to go make $1 million and you have the wherewithal to create this kind of software, by all means, you should go for it, because it is sorely needed, right? So anyway, I just wanted to share that's going to take a little longer for us to get set up, I think. And right now I'm just waiting to hear back from the rep. She asked me to have a certain count of accounts that I would need, and that determines what level we are so that we can actually sign up formally. And I think I have that count, and I would like to still narrow the field and keep Tara in charge and Dawn in charge of the things that they already do. They know it best. They can flag problems and whatnot. So anyway, it will likely remove all of the intake from the actual CareLogic system and just create a face sheet, and then have documents in a drive, or not a drive, in the document library under certain folders or tabs. So anyhow, CareLogic said they will help us with it. They seem not to know anything about it. I've asked literally every year about something like this for probably the last 4 years. and when are you going to build it? And he actually joined me on the conference call and demonstration because he has never had a client ask or use it before. So we will be the first. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it is what it is. So anyway, super excited. We'll keep you all posted.
I'm very excited. Yes,
Yeah, it'll be great. And yeah, electronic
it will be.
signatures and everything, like it's all good to go. So
That's wonderful.
oh, I hope that it eliminates more steps than it maintains or keeps in the process.
Fingers crossed.
Right. So anyway, just wanted to share.
Thank you.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
thank you very much. Very excited. I've been advocating for that for a couple years too. There's where we're going with intake paperwork. For the moment, I think we are all overdue for a little 5-minute break. So we'll stop in and take paperwork for now. Please feel free to go to the bathroom or whatever it is you do, and we'll rejoin at 1:55.